Hi, this is Sam Lagana with the Los Angeles Rams. Whose house? You're listening to the Los Angeles Rams UK podcast. Undenied worldwide. The Los Angeles Rams. It doesn't get any better than this. Let's go Rams!
Good evening and welcome to another episode of the LA Rams UK podcast, episode 86, Unsainted. I'm John, and joining me as always is Andy. Andy, how you doing, mate?
I'm all right, thanks, mate. How are you?
Well, it's the same old, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
We, unfortunately, are now in a bit of a rut that we don't seem to be coming out, and we're obviously here to talk about the Week 11 loss in New Orleans as the Rams crashed 27-20 against the Saints. Before we get into the game, just want to address something, guys, because Andy and I recognise that it's probably tough listening to the podcast because it's pretty difficult to be as positive as we normally are. Like, if you listen to the episodes last season, we're so positive, but it's because the team were doing so well. It's easy to talk about the good, whereas this season, we're trying our best. Believe us, we don't want to be coming on here and putting out these episodes for you guys to listen to and to be feeling like we're moaning or being negative. It's just generally how we are feeling, and I'm guessing a lot of people are feeling out there. It's tough going, isn't it, Andy?
It is tough going, yeah. You know, we're trying to find positives, but it's getting harder and harder each week when we're watching. You know, it's like rinse and repeat every single week now. You know, it's difficult. It is difficult for us to sort of get along with it and try and find good things to talk about.
Yeah, because as every day passes by, there's something new to talk about that breeds perhaps a bit of negativity. However, over the next coming weeks, and it'll become more clear as we get through this episode, we are planning some more uplifting things away from the games to kind of give you something good to listen to. But for now, let's quickly go over what was the Week 11 loss to the Saints. So, Andy, summarise for us how you felt about this game.
To be honest, as we suspected, you know, we made the opposition quarterback look like, you know, a competent quarterback yet again with our, you know, bend don't break soft coverage defense. You know, but there was some positives you could take out of the game. You know, Stafford up until his injury, you know, certainly the first half, he looked a little bit more like his old self. You know, he was quite clinical. We were playing some more deep balls. You know, that touchdown pass to Atwell was a thing of beauty. You know, there were a few positives to take out of it. But then obviously, you know, it seems to be again for us, you know, we allowed the Saints to stay close and in the game. And then second half, you know, we didn't get anything going. And obviously the Stafford injury, and that was, to be honest, that was it. Game over once Stafford went off. You know, I think everybody could accept it was just game over at that point for us. And you could feel the whole, you know, it felt like the whole mood just in the team itself. The team seemed to just drop and be like, oh, well, Stafford's gone. We've lost. You know, and it felt like the whole, like I say, the whole team just sort of deflated and was done. But, you know, there was a few, like I said, there was a few, you know, the run game wasn't brilliant, but it seemed to be a little bit better. You know, you look at some of the players, you know, Cam Akers, you know, 14 carries, 61 yards. You know, Kyron Williams got a few more touches in, you know, to, you know, getting himself back and looked good. And then obviously, you know, there was sort of a few question marks, I think, during the game about why Darrell Henderson wasn't getting touches. But I think that's been kind of, you know, that question I think has now been answered with the recent team moves. But, you know, we were spreading the ball around as well. It wasn't as if, you know, okay, we've lost Cup. We seemed to, I don't know whether more players stepped up or, you know, it was like, right, Cup's out. We have to do this now, you know, and there was, you know, the ball was getting passed around to quite a few different players, you know, obviously, you know, Atwell had his, you know, 62-yard touchdown, which, you know, excellent for him. You know, Robinson was getting targets. Higbee was getting a few targets. Van Jeff, you know, we were getting the ball around. It was just, unfortunately, like I say, once Stafford got it, went out, and that was it. It it literally just felt like it was game over for us.
Yeah, for myself, like, noted down some positives. Obviously, one of the big positives for me was the Atwell touchdown, because it reminded us that we are still capable of big plays. And I think for Atwell to get, a touchdown first and foremost, but also a big catch. I think I was 16 yards after the catch he got as well. It's good for him personally. I wouldn't say it necessarily shuts a lot of people up, but at least gives you perhaps a glimmer of hope of, well, this is what he could do, but it's just going to be a case of, rinse. No, not when I say rinse and repeat, I don't mean like always, be launching it downfield, but hopefully getting a lot more plays where he does get to make off those catches. So, good for him. Robinson obviously getting a touchdown as well. And Matt Gay with a 50-yard field goal. I know it was only 6 seconds left or whatever, but it's the longest field goal he's converted since the week 1 loss to the Bills, which I think was 57, if I'm right. And then on defense, like 4 sacks and an interception. It's great for like Gaines to get a couple of sacks. Floyd as well. Good from that respect, but obviously not enough for the defense to shut down the Saints. And moving on to the kind of negatives, we were 14-10 up at the half. At that point, I thought, right, well, it's not great. So another positive was the fact that we had multiple passing touchdowns for the first time since week 2. It was, week 2 win over the Falcons is the last time Stafford threw more than one touchdown pass in the game. So it was good to obviously have that. But, the third quarter, we kind of capitulated, letting 2 touchdowns from them. Once again, like you touched upon it, making opposing quarterbacks look a star. And then obviously Matt Stafford, I believe, is now back properly in concussion protocol. So he's out for the game this week. But just touching on the quarterbacks that we came up against since the bye week, and this was what I'm about to put on screen, I'll talk about it as well, was put up during the game, so it wasn't in the final stats. I've updated it to the final stats. So when we look at the last 4 quarterbacks we've came up against, so it's Garoppolo, Brady, McCoy, and Dalton. So Garoppolo was 21 for 25, 8.84% conversion rate. Brady, 36 for 50, it was 62, which is quite surprising considering it's Tom Brady. McCoy was 26 for 37, 70%, and Dalton was 21 for 25, 84%. Over those 4 games, the D only managed 1 interception, and that was in this game against the Saints with Taylor Rapp. So the defense, isn't forcing turnovers. Granted, we may have had some fumbles or whatever, but in terms of shutting quarterbacks down, it doesn't matter who we're going to come up against. The defense isn't capable of shutting them down. And again, this, I guess, comes back to the whole soft zone thing. It's, as you said, as we've said over the last few weeks, what we need to do something to stop making quarterbacks look like, well, not even Tom Brady, because Tom Brady's stats aren't actually that good when you look at his, completion rate against us. Considering how poor we've been, it's not actually great for someone like Tom Brady, but we're going up against Patrick Mahomes this week, and I fear for the defense for what he potentially could do to them based on our soft coverage. Andy, would you agree?
Yeah, I think he's just going to tear, like a lot of these quarterbacks have done. He's just going to tear it apart. I'd be interested to see on these completions rates just how because I bet you a lot of these are like we've seen 5, 6, 7-yard passes.
Yeah,
which they're just grinding the way down the field, which is what they're doing to us. They might occasionally have the deep shots, but on the whole, you'll probably find the majority of it is little dink and dunk passes that we're just allowing to complete. And the only times, like we've said before, the couple of times we go into man coverage and think, right, what, stuff this, we're going to play you off the line. We can, stuff them. And at the end of the day, I think, like I've said before, I think Morris has this mentality if he doesn't want those deep shots over the top, but does it really matter when they're still going to score? It's just going to take them 5-10 minutes to score these because of dinking and dunking. Your defense is knackered, and then you're not giving your offense any time to then sort of try and come back. I'd rather we sort of, like I've said before, mix it up, get press man coverage on, and just sort of stop that capability to just dink and dunk the way down the fields, which is what we're doing.
That's it.
It's just, yeah, like I say, you look at the stats, all right, Brady's Brady, we know, he can do it. Jimmy G, we know, always seems to play like an MVP when he plays against us. It's always been that way. But Andy Dalton and Coit McCoy, they should not be getting those sort of stats out of us. These should be quarterbacks that we should be like, right, you know what? You're not doing anything. We're going to shut you down, lock you out, job done. And we're not doing it. We're just letting them have their free will. And, I'm sure for them, it almost feels like a training match because they're just, it's like, yeah, I know where I'm going. Dink and dunk. We always know we're going to make that 5-yard pass down the field and then, grind the yards out that way.
But that's it. We know for absolute certain in terms of, McCoy, he was, releasing the ball within 2 seconds. So he was making very quick passes. So we know for a fact that, out of those 4 quarterbacks, that was the one game where we were really, utilised against his Garoppolo as well. Brady's probably looking at stats and thinking back to the game. Brady's not really kind of that type that's going to, look for the dink and dunk kind of wins.
Yeah.
So
I think as well from the Bucks game. I think his stats would have been higher. There were quite a few number of drop passes by his receivers that and his running backs that would have possibly put that stat line up for him a little bit. I don't think all of that is on Brady. It was a case of a few butter hands here and there that they were letting the balls drop to the floor rather than catch him. Otherwise, that could have been even a worse stat as well.
Yep. Any other positives to take from the game, Andy?
It's just the fact that, like I said, the offense seems to step up a little bit, and players did seem to step up when we needed them a little bit more. It wasn't great. It wasn't, we didn't get the win, but it was nice to see that, we were able to get other people involved. Like I say, Atwell, Robinson, Higbee a little bit more, because he does seem to have over the past few weeks had the case of butterfingers and keeps dropping everything. It was nice to see that we were getting the ball around, and this hopefully obviously we're without Stafford now. We're just gonna have to see what we do. Change it up a little bit. But let's just get behind. If Bryce Perkins at the moment is taking the reps. The QB1 spot, let's just get behind the guy and let's just see what he can do. He does add a little bit of a dynamic element to, he's not up in there with, Stafford as a passer, but he has a set of wheels on him that maybe we can scheme up some quarterback runs ourselves and maybe, grind yards out that way. And maybe that could be a tactic, for obviously the upcoming game with the Chiefs is keep Mahomes off the field. If we can keep the ball for as long as possible, which is what some teams will do to Mahomes. Yep. Maybe Perkins' legs may just be that key to, not saying we're going to win it, but, maybe limit the damage that, can be done against us.
Yep. Keeping Mahomes off the field is probably the critical and key point that we have to note in order for us to have any chance of anything out of the game, let alone win it. But just looking elsewhere in the NFC West, obviously we've now slipped into a 4-game losing streak. Bear in mind we're on the bye week 3-3, we're now 3-7. 49ers took on the Cardinals in Mexico. They unfortunately won 38-10, so they moved to 6-4, and that puts them top of the division with Seattle, who were on the bye week, also 6-4, and the Cardinals now 4-7 in third. With us bringing up the rear, and it's not mathematically happened yet, but it's pretty much seemingly impossible for us to consider being a playoff team, Andy, isn't it? And I don't like to essentially shut it down, as I've started saying, because it's just we're not going to run it back. Let's be honest here.
No, I think it would be up there with literally
the
best
Patriots
Christmas
beating the Falcons in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it would be that Christmas miracle for us all. That if we did even make the playoffs, yet alone anything else. But I think a lot of this now, it's going to depend what's going to happen with certain players in the team now over the next few weeks. There's all the rumours that certain players are done. And if that's the case, then then we can literally write off the season. But I suppose we're just going to have to hope and pray that some players get back sooner rather than later, and we can, maybe, up until, like I say, up until Stafford went off, I thought it was still a winnable game. I thought we could still come back and win this game, because of we weren't playing great, but you sort of had this belief that we could figure something out because it was probably the best defensive we've had for a few weeks now. But without Stafford, I think the season is basically over and done with.
Yep. Just moving on, we will now talk about the ins and outs. We'll just say about the team. So there's one big piece we'll talk about, but just whilst we're on the topic of Matthew Stafford, so the latest that's literally came out within the last half hour is that Matthew Stafford hasn't participated in practice today. McVay said that after a hit on Sunday, he felt numbness in his legs. He had further tested Monday, currently in concussion protocol. McVay can't say whether he has concussion or not. He's calling it a neck issue as the team evaluates. And McVay says, as of now, he's not feeling the numbness, but they will take it a week at a time. And McVay does not go as far as ruling out shutting down Stafford for the rest of the year. I think it's looking more likely that Matthew Stafford's, taking his last snap this season, Andy. Just going on what is now what I would call a health scare.
Yeah, it sounded more and more likely that I think I'd be very surprised. I'll be surprised if he comes back this season, simply because of what's been said, and also what his wife has also said. I think this is the second scare in as many weeks now. She is probably going to be like, look, sit this out now, get yourself healed up properly, stop going back in, and how, depends on how much sway she has. She may be able to convince him to sit and basically just declare himself done for the year, which, like I said last week, at this point, if the season's done, maybe it's the best thing and get him fit and healthy, ready for possibly next year. But obviously then there's the rumours about next year as well.
Yep, that's it. So just quickly recap, if you didn't listen to last week, Kelly Stafford on her podcast, it was an impassioned kind of like speech and almost like not really a cry for help, I guess, but a cry for
it was a heartfelt
Stafford.
wish, I think, more than anything.
Yep, that she basically wants her husband to sit out the rest of the year, but it's because she's got, a bit of a background with, kind of head injuries, concussion and whatnot. So it means a lot to her. It's something that scares her. And to be honest, it would scare any wife, I guess. But for her, she's got a platform to, to state her opinion on it. So last week she was kind of making the case that she'd love nothing more for him to sit the rest of the season out. That wasn't necessarily saying that's what she wanted, but in the last week and since Sunday, I've not heard her podcast or anything this week, but I have seen some kind of comments and kind of that have been put about online that she's pretty much hoping that he's going to sit the rest of the year out, and I think she wants him to consider his future as a football player, which brings up the whole issue about what the Rams do going forward if Matthew Stafford turns around and says, I've got this problem in my elbow, I've had this concussion, I can't risk going out there, taking a hit, and I don't feel my legs. This is the danger you play when you have a veteran quarterback on your roster, especially one who, previous to being in LA, was at a franchise where he was getting battered and beaten an awful lot. So this is all this, the stuff that the adrenaline could, help get him through games. It's catching up with him now, and it's very worrying. And for his sake, and also fingers crossed for our sake, as well as retaining him as a quarterback, I'm getting to the point where I would rather have a healthy Matthew Stafford come back next year than see him go out and take one more snap, take one more hit, and he's back in concussion protocol. I think McVay's an idiot if he doesn't think otherwise. If he thinks otherwise, sorry, because we need to be protecting our players. We've got too many injuries. I don't know what the hell is going on in our roster to do with, like, our doctors or physios or whatever, our medical staff, that so many guys are getting banged and beaten up this year. I think, I don't know. I think we're close to being right behind the Chargers in terms of, like, injuries, but something's got to give here. And like I said, you said it as well, Andy. There's no point in putting these guys out here there to chase games that either we've got no hope of winning or there's nothing actually, to fight for. Let's just shut it down. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm the same. As I said last week, I'd rather now we sit players, we put them on and just basically say, yeah, your season's done. Yeah, keep training, get yourself rehabbed, fit, healthy. We'll run it. We'll come back with this next year. From the scratch. And let's make sure all these players are fit and healthy, because the last thing you want is week 18, one of them gets injured, and then a serious injury, and then they're either out for going to miss the start of the season, or they just think, what, stuff this now, I'm retiring for whatever reason, whether it be their own minds or pressure from family members or anything else. I'd rather we just, let's say, shut this thing down now for the season, get it over and done, and just say, look, and like I say, give these youngsters a chance. Let's see what these youngsters can do now. And these players who are on the bubble of, are they even going to make the squad next year? Let's see what they can do.
Yep.
And then it'll give it'll give, if nothing else, it'll give the backroom staff a look-see, and then go, right, you know what? You're good enough, so we don't need to draft that position. You're not good enough, so we need, that's a potential area we need free agency or draft to look at, bringing through. I think that's a sensible way of going about this now, because, like I say, if Stafford is done for any period of time, what is the point? Because I'm not being horrible. Unless Bryce Perkins turns out to be, Lamar Jackson 2.0, I don't think we're going to, we ain't going to win with who we've got left to play. We ain't going to win any of these games, to be brutally honest.
Hopefully against the Raiders we could get something, but who knows, I guess. But the other thing is, Wilford's out. We're talking about Perkins because John Wilford is also out with an injured neck. So we are having to lean on Perkins. And today we signed Casey Kukas as a quarterback to essentially just give us a backup to Perkins. Yeah. And that's the only reason that he's been signed up, because you need to have, 2 starting quarterbacks on your game day roster, minimum. So it's just a case of filling out the positions. But last week we'd put the poll out asking, what do we do in terms of our backup quarterbacks? Did we cut Wolford? Did we cut Perkins? Did we cut them both? And if I remember right, it was only something like 3% said that Perkins should be cut. So the feeling was that when no one had really seen enough of the guy to make an informed decision about what we should do with him. So I'd be interested to see what people think next week after we see him, regardless of how the game goes, just to see what people kind of think. I'll probably stick up a poll actually just to gauge kind of what people feel, how they feel about him, because we've not seen enough of him. He might have got reps in pre-season, but it's pre-season. You're not, playing against.
You're not playing against, and I personally, if he is going to play the rest of the season, let's give him a seat. Let him get a few games under his belt. Let him get settled, and let's see what he can do. Going against the Chiefs as your first potential game as a full-time starter must be pretty nerve. I wouldn't fancy that being my first career start. Is the Chiefs?
Yeah.
So it could just be. And I think if I remember, the game's at Arrowhead as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So that's not even that's not a nice stadium to go to, even as an experienced quarterback, yet alone as a your first game as a full-time starter. So that's going to be quite a chuck in the fire sort of moment for him.
Yeah, certainly is a baptism of fire. That's one way of putting it.
Yeah, let's give him a few weeks. Let's see how he does. At the end of the day, if nothing else, if he is going to be maybe our backup next year, that if nothing else, he's maybe got a bit of experience behind him. That can help him move on with his career as a backup. Or I'm not going to say he's ever going to replace Stafford, but it could be something that next season McVay could look at and maybe run some of these gimmicky, 2 quarterbacks on the field, pass it, give it to Perkins, let Perkins go off. He can fill that Taysom Hill style role for us.
But yeah, well, that's one thing I have seen out of Perkins. He can carry the ball.
Yeah,
So that's one of the ones he could, perhaps be developed into a kind of Taysom Hill kind
yeah,
of threat out there. The thing is, if you get two quarterbacks out, as we've seen with, Hill, and we've been on, the raw end of those plays where Snap's taking the guy to Hill and then he launches it downfield, makes a hell of a gain. So, I mean, it's one of those ones that it could, hopefully, we'll see how he develops, I guess. Like, it'd be good.
Yeah,
And this period we're coming into, like you said, it's like they're not going to be winnable games for us now. So if that's the case, let's look at it positively to get guys out there that need the reps, get a good look. And this is where you're talking about like your Kyron Williams will really step up, and whatnot, and Perkins can get a chance here. Stafford's done for the season, right? It's fine. Get Perkins out for the love of God. I think Wolford needs to sit if he comes back from injury. It's Perkins I probably want to see more, and that's more. Let's see what the guy can do. Let's see what makes him tick. And let's see if it's a guy we can work with going forward in terms of being a backup to, if it's Stafford or if it's someone else, whoever QB1 is next year. Let's just say that. So for me, let's just get the guys out there, give them the chance to showcase what they can do and to essentially do what you get, I guess, in pre-season where there's guys going out there who are undrafted free agents fighting for a place in the roster. This is a chance for Perkins to stake his claim as, QB2 going forward, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you look at his stats, from, not so much his passing, 5 for 10, 64 yards, but if you look at, for how long he was on the field, 5 carries, 39 yards carrying, average 7.8 on the ground, that's something you can work with. Yeah.
It's better than some of our running backs, put it that way.
Exactly. It's something we can work with. Like I say, maybe gives us that option. Maybe, as I said, for next year, if, maybe let's confuse defenses a little bit and, maybe having a bit more of a mobile quarterback, can help the offensive line because, they're not having to hold for as long. They can basically just pad, move, and, Perkins can be gone, before, defenses can blink and he's off.
Yep. So, well, it'll be interesting to see how he kind of lines up. But like you were saying, it's maybe not the best first game for it to be starting in, is it?
No, it's not the best first game, but you know what? Let's just see what he can. Let's see what he can do. If it is the case that Stafford's done for the year, let's just give him the year now and just as you said, let's see what he can do. We know basically what Wolford is. Let's just give Perkins a chance and let's see. And you know what? If we get to the point, let's see what this other guy we've just brought in can do.
As I said earlier on Twitter, let's see if he can cook us up a storm.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
just looking at other positions, excuse me, Ashawn Robinson got announced as being out for the season tonight, torn meniscus. So that kind of looks like, I think, Marquise Copeland would be next in line, if I'm right, to step up to fill that gap.
Or him or Bobby Brown, I would imagine, would be the two most likely.
Yep. Yep. Just looking at the depth chart, they are the next two in line, I guess. Yep. But the other big one to talk about is the release of Henderson. What the hell's going on there, Andy? Yeah? Like, I was absolutely shocked last night when that came out.
I was shocked about both of them, Henderson and Hollins. I was like, okay, what's going on here? Is this? I was expecting some sort of, maybe an hour later, an announcement that the Rams have signed such and such and such and such. Of the free agency market. Well, obviously, we've not seen anything on that front. Yeah, we've all heard Melvin Gordon's coming to the Rams. Well, I'd have expected something to have been announced by now if that was going to be the case to get him in the building as quick as possible. So we'll see what happens there.
Yep.
But then I've
obviously as well. Sorry, he was released again.
Yeah, but he's been in and out the squad more than he's been released, brought back. So obviously. Something maybe, is not quite right there. We do have other guys, the one I do like is that Jared Pinkney, who's the tight end, who's on our practice squad. Mm-hmm. He looked like a good player. So if we can get him going, I think he could potentially be one for the future as well. But I actually couldn't believe what, Henderson. Now I've heard since then that there's rumours apparently he's got a knee injury and he's basically would have been done for the year anyway.
Well, just to interrupt you there, I don't think that is true because 10 minutes before we came on, the air tonight. I've just seen these tweets. He has been claimed by the Jags.
Okay, so obviously he mustn't be injured, so that rumour was
Yep.
wrong.
So the reason, if anyone's not seen it, what Andy's talking about here is that McVay commented that Henderson said he felt something in his knee, and people are saying, "Oh, that's the reason why he didn't see as many snaps." There's also talk about we're wanting to give Williams more snaps, so Henderson has been demoted to RB3. His contract's up in the off season, so there's this is just your usual kind of like again dirt sheet talk or whatever. People are saying that he didn't take too kindly to that. Had words McVay. McVay said, "Look, you're going to be gone at the end of the season anyway. Let's just get rid of you now." Who knows what's going on? I'm not saying that's what's going on. That's just what people are trying to say online. But for the fact that he's signed with the Jags this evening, I don't think there's an injury there. I think it's a case of the Rams are not really cutting losses. I guess they're making an informed decision. We want to get Williams more snaps. If we still want to get rid of Akers, we need to get him more snaps. Get him out there, get him in a short window. Henderson is obviously not part of the plans going forward, so he's gone. They've done right by him. And apparently Henderson also said on Facebook, in fact, I've seen screenshots from Facebook where he actually said that it was something that he was proactive in requesting. So I think after the game, he said, "Look, guys, if I'm not going to win here, let me go now. Let me go now. I'll find somewhere else and go. You guys can move on. There's no point me eating up a roster place." And it's one of those ones that he's not said anything bad about being a Ram or leaving the Rams. I think it's just one of those ones. Both parties are like, it's time to move on. You want to go, we want you to go because we want to go in a different direction. So long. Thanks for the memories.
Yeah, I think as well, as the classic thing is, you don't sign a running back to a second contract because they're easily replaceable in the draft. He was maybe one of those players that, we could have potentially looked at maybe bringing back in free agency on a cheap deal if nobody wanted him. All right, we'll bring you back, league minimum, 1 year deal, just as cover. But obviously, the team has, decided to go other ways. But there was, as I said, the rumours of Melvin Gordon and people. The other rumour was, well, we're clearing cap space to bring him in.
Yeah.
Which we'll wait and see. But I would have expected something to have happened by now if that was the case. But like I say, it was shocking. But see, everyone's thinking Akers is going to be gone. We're trying to ship him. I'm wondering if we're not trying to ship him. I'm wondering if they've maybe worked something out, McVay and Akers and everybody else, and they're going to give him, and basically, all right, you know what? You're showing us now that maybe, we'll give you to the end of the year, knuckle your head down, prove to us, because he got the lion's share of the carries against the Saints, and you're beginning to think maybe, like I say, McVay and Akers and his team, whatever, have started to work things out, and maybe, he could still be here next year. Potentially playing with, potentially pushing with him and Williams to be RB1, RB2. I wouldn't rule Akers staying next year out of it yet, as much as fans, maybe, want it to happen. I could still see him being here if that both parties feel it's right to stay.
Yeah, the other thing to consider is, as you've kind of alluded to, like it's easy to replace running backs, so we're definitely a franchise that will keep a running back on the rookie contract and then move them on, bring a new one in. So we'd have Williams and Akers on rookie contracts.
Yeah.
We'd have another maybe year or two tops with Akers. We'll also have another like 3 or whatever with Williams.
Yeah, we'll have one with Akers. We'll have next season with Akers on his rookie deal. But again, you do what most teams do nowadays is they just, every draft, every year you draft a running back, in the 4th, 5th, 6th round.
Yeah.
You bring one in, so you always have that rotation that, one will step out the door, the next one will step in. And, that's, unless you are a talented running back of the likes of, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, a lot of teams, Cowboys have been, I think, finally realizing they're getting burnt with Zeke's contract.
Yeah.
Obviously, we kind of got burnt with, I think Gurley's contract has probably put us off as a team from ever really paying a running back again, his second contract, unless it's a cheap deal, So, and a lot of teams, as I say, the same now. It's like, well, what's the point? We can replace you tomorrow, and you give this guy, a contract and then, because of the amount of contact they take, next year, year after, their careers are basically, for the majority of them, are over. You know, even the best ones, Kamira's having injury problems now. Zeke's obviously had injury problems. CMC's had injury problems. You know, it adds up after a while to these guys. So, you know, in the big scheme of things, it probably makes sense that, yeah, we're not going to give you game time. We'll let you maybe go out, go with another team that potentially could re-sign you, or at least, you know, you're putting yourself on that shop window for maybe a contract at the end of the year that a team may, you know, another team may decide to pick you up.
I guess what you excuse me, my throat's absolutely like clogged up to me. I guess what you could say is that in terms of priority positions within any roster in the NFL these days, running back is not as high as it used to be.
No,
Like you said, running backs are 10 a plenty. If you can get a decent young guy, you can get a good 3-4 years maybe out of him if he performs well, and then ship him on, bring the next guy in. So I suppose it's different when you've got, you know, receivers or whatnot. You know, finding a good wide receiver or a good
yeah,
tight end is something where you want to maybe focus, you know, drafting well and then paying. You know, the likes of Cup, you know, he's getting paid, not paid as much as he could have, you know, or he wanted, you know, but he's getting paid now based off last season. And then obviously quarterbacks, or you know, if you've got an elite linebacker, cornerback, defensive tackle, whatever, you're paying for position like elite positions, you know, as opposed to running backs are just. It's a shame because when you think back to, you know, through our history, you know, having guys like Marshall Faulk and, you know, Steven Jackson, really, and then Todd Gurley, I guess, as well, before the knee injuries. You know, the Rams have historically had, and that's, I'm sorry, forgetting obviously the legend Dickerson as well. You know, the Rams have historically had some elite running backs in a roster. But like you've touched upon, with what's happened to Gurley, it's made, you know, the back office staff that we've got there right now, like some McVay's need, think it's not a position we want to really pay for, because all it takes is one bad, you know, hit, one bad tackle, and that could turn their career around. And the same could be said, I guess, for any position, but running back is
yeah.
it's a high contact position, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think most teams, you know, if you ask most analysts, the two least important positions on offense, it's the running back, and in defense, it's the linebacker. You know, that they're the, you know, more the middle linebacker, you know, rather than, you know, if you got your hybrid edges like your TJ Watts and stuff, and, you know, that's fair enough. That's a different kettle of fish. But in terms of, you know, and I think if you look at a lot of teams now, they, you know, they're not areas that they prioritize to, compared to where they'll put the money. You know, the money is, you know, traditionally now it's going to be your edge players, your corners, you know, and like you say, wide receivers and your quarterback. They're the positions, and, you know, really offensive line should be up there with it as well. We just don't seem to have that. You know, we seem to don't want to do that. But, you know, you look at teams that are successful, but that's where they invest their money into. You know, it's all right when you've, you know, it's great when you've got a, you know, quarterback on his rookie contract, because you can spread that quarterback cash wherever that you want then, you know, especially if you get him in the first round, because you've got the extra 50-year option for him.
Yeah.
But once you get to the stage, you know, where like we are with a veteran, you kind of, you know, you've really got to start looking at where you have to pay. And unfortunately, I'd say running back is one of them positions you just don't pay anymore.
That's it. Yep. Just looking elsewhere in terms of kind of injury reports coming through. Just in the last half hour, Brian Allen didn't practice from injury. Tyler Higbee's day to day with his knee injury. Trayvon Howard was limited today with hip injury. Naseki didn't practice. He's out an ankle injury, but he's day to day. Allen Robinson was limited with ankle, noted. Matt Skura was limited with knee, and John Wilford was limited with neck. So that kind of rounds off today's injury report. Anything else in terms of the roster you want to bring up, Andy, in terms of moves in, out?
No, not really. I say, you know, the other one was obviously Justin Holland's along. I think he's kind of been missed in the whole Henderson thing, because that was the big shocker. But again, you know, it was kind of like, well, you know what? He's been off. You know, he seems to have been the number one edge alongside, you know, opposite Floyd. So who's replacing him? Because, you know, who's going to take? You know, you kind of questioning who's going to take that position now. You know, again, are they expecting to sign somebody, or, you know?
don't
because
think they're
Lewis,
expecting to sign anyone at this stage now.
Lewis hasn't done anything,
No.
to maybe push unless, something's happened that, we don't see. But I think the moves are questionable for the team, as in you're looking and going, yeah, that's great if you've got another man to step up. Like I say, running back, we probably do have with Akers and Williams. And of course, people say, maybe want to look a bit more at Ronnie Rivers as well, for next year as well. Maybe see if we've got the three that we need in our building. But, the opposite edge player, opposite Floyd at the moment, is kind of like, well, who's going to replace Hollins, on a snap-for-snap basis? Because he was getting a large portion of the first team snaps.
Yep, well, it'll be interesting to see what they're thinking. But as you're saying, when you make kind of cuts like this, you expect it's because someone's coming in. But I think they're just starting to clear down the roster, to be honest. But moving on to week number 12. So in case you didn't know, this week is Thanksgiving week in the NFL, which means a feast of football for all. So we'll have games on Thursday night and Friday morning. So just to kind of quickly go over these times of GMT. Bills will be at the Lions at 5:30 on Thursday, followed by the Giants, Cowboys, in what's seen as the a kind of traditional Thanksgiving game at 9:30, both in Sky Sports. Then at 1:20 in the morning, Patriots take on the Vikings. They're all on Sky Sports. As for the Sunday lineup, the early game is Bengals at the Titans, and then the late game is the Saints at the 49ers, and the late game, Sunday Night Football, is Packers at Eagles, with Monday Night Football being the Steelers Colts. And that means, folks, that the Week 12 matchup against the Chiefs will be on Game Pass. So no Neil Reynolds again, yes. I think it's one of those ones, because we are mostly in the late window, you've got that kind of 1 in 3, 1 in 4 chance of being picked. But hopefully, based on how we've been, this season, Sky Sports will go, let's show someone better. But, I've got a feeling perhaps the Seahawks games will get picked. But yeah, Andy, so week 12, we're off to Kansas.
Aye. Yeah, I wasn't looking forward to this game, even at the start of the season. Before the season even started, I'm kind of dreading this now. I think it's almost getting to the point where you just kind of if we can just get out this game without any injuries, for me, that'd be a positive now, if I'm being honest with you.
It's bad that we're at that point where a win for us would be to come out of the game with no new injuries.
I just don't see it a way for us to win this game. I really don't. I think it would be probably up there now with the shock of the season. It would kind of almost be like the Saudi Arabia Argentina moment, sort of disbelief if we win that game. To be brutally honest, especially now, as I say, with Stafford's basically, I think, almost ruled out of the game. I really just any slight hope we might have had, I think, is
It's just, I would agree. It's just gone. Like people describing it as like a funeral waiting to happen. I believe in America, I think 90% of the channels will be showing the game. So it is essentially America's game for Sunday, and it'll be great if you're a Chiefs fan. Great as a Chiefs fans, because they'll get to relax and they'll get to bowl. But for us, I feel kind of bad because, and I tweeted this earlier on this evening, that I put in a waiver request my fantasy team to pick up the Chiefs defense. That should tell you everything you need to know about the game. I'm trying to get the Chiefs on my fantasy team so I can start them. And I think, like you said, Stafford's going to be out, and it's we're trying to be positive, talk about Perkins. Let's get and see what he can do. But equally, this is a good team. It's not like if this was maybe like the Raiders or whatever, or we had the Texans in our schedule, where I'd be like, we've got a chance of doing something, and chance of going out and leading this to a win. It's just praying for mercy, I guess.
Yeah,
probably the best way.
There's a reason why the Chiefs are one of the up there as one of the favourites to get to the Super Bowl again this year. As much as like I say, we'd love to see Perkins ball out and sneak that win. I think you just have to, in reality, just face the facts that it would be a Thanksgiving miracle if it did happen.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd say I want to see a game, right? So I'm not talking about overall result. I'm talking about things like I want to see come out of game. I want to see Perkins throw a touchdown pass. I want to see, because we've had that with our backups where they can't get into the end zone. They can't throw something in the end zone. So I want him to get a touchdown pass. I want to see maybe show us what he can do in terms of quick fire passes that are short, the kind of short, medium, long passes. Like to see what he's got, what kind of cannon he's got on him as well. I would like to see Williams get more touches, hopefully get some, decent yardage as well. I would like Bobby Evans to be, locked up in a trailer before the game and not released no matter who gets injured on that team.
I have a horrible feeling, like in the Saints game, he's going to end up our left tackle for this week.
But do you know what? Like, it's one of those ones that you could be classed as not pull age tweets, but like tweets where time changed or whatever. Where I seen the tweet go, "Oh, Bobby Evans is now left tackle," and I thought, was that the moment when the game turned against us?
I don't. From what I could see, he wasn't that bad at left tackle. To be honest, he came out of college as a tackle. We've moved him to a guard. We've basically said, you're going to play guard. So maybe going back to tackle might. I'm not going to say he's ever going to be, but it might be because it's more natural for him from his time in college. That maybe he's just one of those players. He can only play one position. He's not one of these versatile guards that can move around. We'll just have to wait and see. I don't think he played as bad as a tackle as I've seen him at guard. He at least managed to stop a few times. Players.
Yeah.
From getting to the quarterback. So we'll have to wait and see. But like I say, maybe it's a slip into a more natural position for him is maybe what he needs, and we'll just see what happens. But obviously, I suppose the other big question, is, as much as we've talked about Stafford and concussion protocol, what's going on with David Edwards? Because that's a number of weeks again. He's gone out, come back, and gone straight back again. And there's questions about what's going to happen with it. What's going on with him.
Well, that's why I'm raising the question about the medical staff. In the back room, what the hell is going on with them? That our guys are getting so beaten up, so hurt, and they're being kept out for longer. Like for example, Van Jefferson at the start of the season, he's got a wee injury. He'll just miss it week to week, and it's like, no, we need to put him in IR. So do you know what I mean? Like, and then it was like with Cup last week. We knew he was injured, and we're podcasting live, and we're going, well, they're saying he might be going to IR, but he's not. And obviously, since he has been put in IR, but it's like, surely you must know by now. It's like day 3-4 after the game. You should know if he's in or out. In terms of like if he's actually properly injured, or it's like we'll kind of take it day to day. It's like, so what the hell is going on with the medical staff? Like, does there need to be a clear out there, because the guys. Not that they can stay fit, because they're all athletic in their own right, but they can't stay healthy for whatever reason. So that's where your physios and that, you're not helping them rehab. That's where that kind of falls in them.
I think sometimes, like I alluded to before, I think each year there's a team that just seems to pick up that injury bug that they just can't shift. And I think over the last number of years we've been lucky that we've had a couple of injuries, but nothing major. And this year has really. We are basically what the Ravens was last year, where they just couldn't get anyone healthy at all throughout the whole season. They were losing people left, right, and centre. And I think that's us this year. We're just the unlucky ones that we've that bug has come and stayed at at SoFi and basically said, "No, we're just going to wreck your season for you."
It just seems to be a lot like you're saying, is it?
Yeah, and it's just exposed the, like I said, the lack of depth that I think we were all worried about, and all the analysts, even before the season started, analysts were saying, yeah, the Rams are good while they've got the ones, but as soon as you come back out of that, if any of them get crocked, you are looking at Rams, and exactly what the analysts predicted has happened, unfortunately for us.
Yep, and as frustrating as it is, it's just unfortunately a case of just limping onto the end of the season, so to speak, isn't it?
Yeah, like I say, let's limp off to the end of the season now. Let's get this done. Let's just, let's hope we can get, as much as I say it now, I know we ain't got our first round pick, but as high a second round pick as we can, and let's just see if we can, maybe do what providing obviously players come back that we want, that, we can maybe do what the Chiefs did the other year, a little bit of a mini reset, have a good draft, and then, bring, and then rewind it again and keep going, maybe extend our window for maybe another couple of years.
Yep, we'll just have to see how it goes out. Moving on, in terms of questions, we only got one question in, and that came from Lewis Perry, and he asks, out of AD, Stafford and McVay, how many do you think will still be with the Rams after this year? Says, feel like AD might go anyway, Stafford might do with his concussions, and Kelly worried about him. And without those two, as we've talked about before, McVay may follow. So, what do you think, Andy? Do you think any of them will be fully off?
Aaron Donald's the one that worries me the most. I do feel he's just going to turn around and go, this isn't worth it. He's too old for a rebuild. He's not going to wait 3, 4, 5 years. His career is basically going to be over. And he's not, as much as I hate to say it, he's not been the same Aaron Donald that we're used to. So, there may be that thing in the back of his mind of he wants to get out while he's still on a high rather than being the shell of a player, that he was, even last year. So he's the worry. But to be honest, it's not just, Stafford and Donald that I'm worried about. It's going to be other players. Ramsey isn't probably going to want to stick around for that sort of, rebuild. He's probably going to want to go, and then you start, you have to start, McVay goes as well. I can see that happen. If those, if the team starts falling apart, he's just going to stuff it. I'll take me 140 million, go in a booth, and that's me sorted. But then it's a case of the questions start of, well, do we just tear the team down, sell off what players we can while they're still in the prime, and get the draft picks and just go for a complete whole rebuild? So, it could be that, unfortunately, we hate to see it, we could see the likes of, Cup getting traded, Ramsey getting traded, all these players, all of a sudden the team's just going to go, you know what, we're just going to, we'll tear it, get the draft picks and just start again from scratch, and go.
And the thing is, like you're saying, like if you're going to move those kind of players on, you want to do it whilst they're still in their prime, and you can get good, solid picks for them, multiple picks.
Yeah.
For example, like if you were to trade Cup off, like based off of last season, like he's capable of, the Rams would be looking at, they would be wanting multiple firsts.
Yeah, you'd be looking at, I'd probably say more, probably a first, a second, and maybe a fourth or a fifth. And maybe, maybe a third for the year after. You would be looking at multiple picks,
Yeah.
Same with Ramsey. He's not been the same player, but obviously, the Ramsey factor, you may be able to swindle it. Maybe not for multiple picks, but you could probably swindle a first round pick out of a team, and there's other players in the squad as well that, teams, not sort of first round picks, but you might be able to get, flip for thirds, fourths. That you can maybe then, you've got that ability to then use those picks to move around the board and bring in a bit more talent. But that is the other scenario I think people don't want to sort of look at, is that potentially next year could be a very different team depending on what happens with certain players this year.
Well, that's it, because for all we know, one could say I'm off, and then the rest go, well, if he's going, I'm going.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's unfortunately House of Cards. It's not nice to talk about. It's not nice to think about, but it's
reality, unfortunately, that
it unfortunately could happen. Yeah,
these things could happen depending on how the season progresses and how players feel it. As you say, at the end of the year, players may just, let's say, decide, I'm done. I don't want to do this.
Yep. And I think the other kind of key one is, it is Sean McVay. I mean, I know he said that, as long as the core guys are here, I'll still be here. But, I mean, he might turn and go, look, I'm sorry, guys, I've not got the heart. I've not got it in me to rebuild here. I think with how this season's going, maybe it's best for us all to just move on. You guys bring someone in with new, fresh ideas that can take these guys on. I've, had a great time here. I've been successful, but, because we've seen games this season where it just doesn't look like he's got any other ideas. He doesn't know what
Yeah.
he's doing at times. Doesn't know
It-
how to change up and adjust. We've said that multiple times, even in the last couple of years, but
he-
we've still been
it's
successful.
it's not that as well. He doesn't seem to have that same sideline ability, that motivation. He doesn't feel, he'd be there
That
before,
fire in
riling
his
players
eye,
up. Yeah,
yeah.
getting players, firing them up. Now he just seems to be standing there, just like, oh well, yeah, that didn't work. Well, there doesn't seem to be that same passion almost like passion for the game that he had, even last year. Just that passion seems to have disappeared from him.
Yep.
Like I say, whether obviously, there's stuff going on. Obviously, he's lost family members. Maybe he's just thinking, what, I've lost my. And if he has I'm not being horrible to the guy. I love McVeigh for everything he's done for the team. But if he has lost that passion for the game, I would rather he just came out and just was honest at the end of the season and went, look, I don't have the passion for coaching in this game anymore. I retire and let's move on. I don't want to see him do it, but I'd rather if that's the case, as I say, he has lost it and he doesn't have that desire. It's just, let the team move forward. And yeah, we may be in for a few rough years, but I think after the Jeff Fisher years, we all felt dejected, and it only takes one coach to come in with ideas, and things can change again.
Well, that's it. Look at what Sean McVay did when he came in. So
Yeah.
the next Sean McVay could be under our very noses.
Yeah.
And like you said, we've been through the Jeff Fisher year. We've been through some really dark times. So
Yeah.
this isn't as bad as it feels. I think it's just because it's off the back of a Super Bowl win.
Yeah,
makes it feel worse. This isn't as bad for anyone who's not been a Rams fan. Wasn't with us when we were on Salus and all right. That it was much worse during those days where we couldn't literally buy a win when we were the worst in the league.
This is games.
If we didn't have these injuries like you were talking about, Andy, this would be a totally different season. It's not a case of we've got good ones, but maybe not got good twos or threes, but we've got guys that are capable of winning out there.
Yeah.
Whereas the roster we had back then, just you couldn't buy the win.
Let's be honest, at times in St. Louis, Johnny Hecker was sometimes our best quarterback because that was the only way we could move the ball, was we were having to do all these stupid trick plays, everything else, because we couldn't move the ball otherwise. It was the only way we could ever get any sort of offense going was by, I remember the days when people were saying, Johnny Hecker should be transferred over to QB. He does better than the OR starter, so it tells you everything you need to know, how bad it got, in those days when we just felt like, as you said, we couldn't buy a win no matter what we done.
Like, if we were podcasting back then, the air would be blue every episode. That's just to give anyone a picture of what it felt like to be a Rams fan back then.
Yeah.
That's where we'd be coming on here effing and blinding about the coaching staff, the team, player positions, the franchise as a whole, and again, that's off the back of a Super Bowl win and a period of success, and then it just seems to be your kind of cycle.
It's the it's the classic thing of the NFL is there's parity in the league. You'll have your few good years, and you have to tear it down and rebuild. That, to be honest, is one of the things. Unless you're really lucky and you're the Patriots and you get a quarterback like Tom Brady, which is a generational talent. You might see one of them every 50 years or whatever. There's that parity in the league that teams will be good, then they'll suck for a few years, then you come back to being, and it's going to be the same for us at some point. I think, as you said, we weren't expecting it to be this year, maybe to expect to, make the playoffs, maybe have a good run in the playoffs. But, injuries have sidelined it, and like I say, maybe people's hearts aren't in it because they've got the ring now and they're like, well, I've done my job, and, it may have to be time, this day was going to come at some point. We just, let's say, we just didn't expect it quite as soon as we did.
Yep. So basically what we're saying, folks, is this might feel bad, but this is temporary. It's temporary. We will come back up. We will rise again. We've done it before. We can do it again. And like Andy says, this is the NFL. This is the reality. It's just that we went through such a long period of no success or not even being half decent. It's turned around and we're like, oh my God, we can compete. We've been challenging. It's been great. And it's it's not selfish because anyone in any team would feel the exact same. You want to win, you want to be successful, and as you just touched upon there, we have said we knew this was going to come. We hoped it maybe a year or two down the line, but is it one of those ones that maybe it's now happening because it's bringing forward any rebuild?
Yeah, we're at a position where, luckily, I'm, to be honest, really happy that we never got McCaffrey and Burns. I'm glad we didn't waste our picks there at that point.
Because we need them. We need them.
And, we've got to get through this year and, the next year, the upcoming draft. After that, we start getting our first round picks back. So, there's that excitement again where we can maybe start, picking up good young talent.
Yeah.
Maybe balance the books a little bit again, because we are very, very, very top heavy on the cap, and, even before we start next season, we're a few million quid in the hole before we've even kicked off the season.
Yeah.
We've got to start making savings even before we kick off the season. Now, I know everyone says, oh, you can work the books, you can work the magic, but we are now as a team getting to the point where we haven't got any more room to work that magic. We have to either, again, make some serious choices on which players we will want to keep and which players we are going to have to let go, because it's going to be tough years. So maybe a case of, we've got the ring, we've got the job done. What is what we wanted to do, maybe see if we can hit a mini rebuild and see. If not, at least we'll have something to enjoy. Let's start enjoying day one of the draft again.
That's it. And when it comes to the off season this year, guys, we will still be active. Obviously, not as regularly, and we will look at free agency. We will look at the draft. We'll look at post draft as well. When we start saying the guys training camp, OTAs, the lot, we will make sure we will be covering that this year, because we will want to keep a close eye on what's going on with the roster. But just before we wrap up, one other thing I wanted to kind of talk about, Andy. You've been watching the World Cup.
I have been watching a few games here and there. Yeah, I got a few dodgy looks today off work, mate. Cheering on Japan. They're one of my teams in the work sweepstakes. So I got Japan, South Korea, and Holland. So
Holland one's not too bad, I guess.
That's not a bad one, but there's been a few good shockers in this World Cup so far. A few very dodgy decisions as well, if I'm being brutally honest.
Yeah, yep. Technology is a wonderful thing when it works for you. It's not when it works against you, as we've seen. But obviously, there is a vested interest amongst our community because England, Wales, and America are obviously in the same group. So obviously, Wales and America drew one each the other night. But before we podcast next week, there's also the big one: England versus USA is on Friday night. Which you'll probably see a lot of arguments in our Discord channel, which will be great for me because I'm Scottish. My team is shit. We don't qualify, although I'm half English as well, so I do support England as well. But I'll probably be more of a referee come Friday night at 7:00 in the Discord channel. Hopefully not having to delete any comments. We've never had to moderate Discord ever in its existence, so I'm hoping that Friday night is not the start of that. I'm hoping for.
I'll try and behave then and make sure I'm not the one you have to moderate.
See, I know what you could be like, Andy. So
yeah,
obviously that'll be good for the group as well. Obviously we've got the Karens I played tonight as well. We've got some Canadians in our Discord server as well, but they unfortunately lost 1-0 to Belgium. But they did give a good showing of themselves, and they did have more chances than Belgium did in the game. But on the topic of World Cup, came up with an idea today because there's still a few weeks to go in the season. The games aren't exactly, the Rams games aren't exactly good to talk about. And, as you probably noticed the last couple of weeks, we are, spending less time reviewing the game gone by because, it's much of the same old. So we're trying to kind of just summarise it to bring in more context. So I've came up with an idea. And because the World Cup's coming on, I thought we'll go a World Cup theme. So what I've came up with is the inaugural Rams World Cup. And what I'm going to do is take the period since the last World Cup, so it'll be the 2018 season through to last season, 2021 season. This season is excluded because, 4-year cycle. That'll be the next World Cup, I guess. And what I'm basically doing is from each season, picked 8 games, playoffs included as well, where the Rams obviously won. And what we're basically looking to do is put votes out there. Still work out the logistics because we want to put this out to all our social media platforms and also Discord, where anyone who is on our social medias or even sees the post, I guess, can vote to pick their favourite games. So much like the World Cup, there's 32 games across the 4 seasons. They have been ranked in terms of pots. What I've done is I've looked at each season's records. So the best season record out of them. Well, the best season record was technically the 2018 season. We were 13-3, but that's ranked as in the second seeds because we won the Super Bowl last year. So that kind of supersedes. So what I've done is, of the 8 games, they're listed in order as they occurred during the season. Each of the games has been allocated to a country. This, rather than trying like draw names at hat, what I did was I looked at the draw rankings that they actually had for the actual World Cup, and I matched up all our games with that. So to give you an example, Argentina were ranked as the number 1 team in terms of the draw. So the best game in terms of that from last season would be also the Super Bowl. So the Super Bowl would be the equivalent of Argentina. So what I've done is I've then taken what the actual World Cups are and worked out what the games match up. So we've got 8 groups of 4 that's got, a game from each of the seasons, and they'll get put up and people will basically vote. The top 2 for each group will go through the next round and so on. And what we've worked out done is if we do take a round over the next few weeks, so next week we'll talk about the so-called group stages. So the votes will all go up over the course of the next week. We'll talk about what people voted for in terms of the groups, and the following week will be the first knockout, and we'll whittle it down until in week 18 we'll have the overall final, and the winner of that vote is essentially, over the last 4 years, the greatest Rams game of the last 4 years. It's just an attempt, folks, to give us something, to reminisce about the good times we've had over the last 4-5 years, and, give us something positive to talk about as what it seems to look like as we close out the F them picks era of the Rams. So that's our idea of something that we're going to do over the coming weeks. There'll be an article put up on LARams.uk just to go over what I'm talking about, and it'll kind of break down not necessarily the rules, but how we've worked it out. And then from there, what we'll do is I'll hopefully fire up articles that will detail all the games. We'll give you a link to the highlights of the game so you can refresh your memory or just reminisce. And then we'll stick up the votes and you guys can vote away. And hopefully next week on the podcast, we'll tell you who has made it out of the group stages. How's that sound, Andy?
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. It sounds quite fun. It'd be nice to just go back as well and look at some of these games that maybe slipped from our memories, because they're not. We're always going to have certain games that stick in our memory. Like the Chiefs Rams game, obviously the Super Bowl. Beating the Niners last year. Those games are going to be up, but there are some other games that I'll probably look and go, "Oh, I forgot about that one." And then it'd be nice to think. It'd be a nice little little competition to see which game. I'm interested. I think people are going to assume it's either going to probably be the Super Bowl or the Chiefs game, but there may be a dark horse somewhere in there that we've not thought about yet.
Yeah, there will be. I mean, I've done the draw. I've seen the groups, and just to give you a preview, one of the groups has the 49ers NFC Championship game and the Saints NFC Championship game. So it's a group of death. There is look like there is a group of death in there, and the other 2 wins in that group are games where our defense performed extremely well as our offense. So, like I said, over the coming days, probably most likely tomorrow, I'll get most of them hopefully up. They'll be on LARams.uk, and you'll be able to read. There'll be the game, a blurb, and then hopefully you can see the highlights for it. So just keep an eye on the website and keep an eye on the socials over the coming week, folks. But for episode 86, that's another one in the bag for us. Andy, always a pleasure, mate, to talk to you about the Rams.
Yeah, same with you, John.
Let's look forward to our own World Cup and seeing who's going to be the victor and the champion of the LA Rams wins over the last 4 years, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. I'm interested now to see which one is going to take the top spot, because I'm hoping. We'll see. we'll see. It'll be interesting to see who gets through.
Yep, it will be. But for us this evening, folks, that's everything. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, like and share, subscribe. Our YouTube channel's starting to get beefed up a bit. We're starting to be a bit more active on there. You've got us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and also our Discord server. But check out LARams.uk for all our articles and we feature bits. But that's us for this evening, folks. So thank you so much for listening and take care. And we'll catch you next week for episode 87. Take care. Bye.